As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
In this essay, we will be analysing Goodfellas and Martin Scorsese's work with similar techniques as director. Goodfellas is immensely rich with narrative styles such as narration, freeze frames, fourth wall breaking. These are crucial elements to the film's success in immaculately telling Henry Hill's rise and fall. The film is a clear and enticing biopic. However, Scorsese decides to start the film with a moment from Hill's apogee, which is the moment of the gruesome murder of Billy Batts in the boot of Henry's car, which is then followed by a freeze frame and then the first line of Henry's narration as we are met with the music of the opening credits. Then the film proceeds to tell Henry's story chronologically. This ultimately worked well for Scorsese as he reused the same structure for the first scene of The Wolf of Wall Street, a glimpse of the apogee of the character, freeze frame and then narration beginning the story. Unlike The Wolf of Wall Street, the film starts off with this diachronic scene because it's the most important part of the film. Scorsese is telling us explicitly, but we only understand its importance when we come around to it the second time. The scene takes on a whole new meaning to the audience when they grasp the consequences of that moment in Henry's life. The lighting that Scorsese uses in the film is for the most part very low-key and dark, but the lighting is especially important in this scene. When they pull over and open the boot of the car to find Billy Batts still alive, the three men are engulfed in the red light of the car boot. The red light indicates danger, foreshadowing the meaning of this moment in the story, and the red light in the boot of the car submerging Henry in red representing the beginning of the end, which gives an eerie importance to the scene. After all, it's the murder of Billy which ultimately ends Henry's mob life, and we witness the pivotal moment at the very beginning. This is a very clever accessory to telling the story, which helps construct the film. We'll be analysing the fantasy of the gangster life, then later the unravelling of it all in terms of cinematography. The camera work perfectly reflects the emotional and mental state of Henry in this first scene, as we see it through his perspective. In this sequence we have Henry and Karen walking into the Coca-Cabana through the staff entrance, past the kitchen and straight into the front seat of the club. The biggest and most clear aspect to the scene is the motion and duration of the shot. It's all shot in one take as the camera glides with Henry and Karen down the entrance, as we as the viewers experience every little piece of the fantasy with them as they go through. Complementing this is the motion of the camera, as it glides effortlessly through the scene, being smooth and relaxed, reflecting Henry's perfect life with no bumps or issues, all plain sailing in his eyes at least. Diving in deeper to the camera focus and distance of the shot, we are kept at a medium distance, not being too close so we don't miss any of the experience going on around our main characters, at the same time not being a close-up so we don't make it seem too intense. Whilst power to this, it's not a long shot because it would pull us away from Henry and Karen, making it impersonal to them, as we can see their reactions to the environment going around with the medium shot. Again, here's another aspect matching well together, as the focus is in perfect balance with the shot distance as we see what the characters are paying attention to, with the main characters always in focus as they indulge. In this fantasy-like scene, the camera focus is always on people, shaking their hands or giving them special treatment, which leads on to the mise-en-scène of the scene. You can tell that the main character Henry is a confident woman because the camera follows them through the back entrance. He talks and interacts with people in the kitchen. By the camera following them so closely behind, the audience can see the characters and how they walk and act. They will pick up on characteristics such as Henry's confidence. Here Scorsese puts us in Karen's shoes as we are guided in awe through the glorified aspects of Henry's life. Carrying on to the editing, Scorsese uses the long duration shot in a very effective manner. There are two main uses of the editing technique in Goodfellas, the first being as above. It situes the audience in the moment and Henry's world. The unbroken nature of the shot also shows his power and the control he has over things due to his position in society. The second time it is used, it builds up on the same theme, taking place after Henry learns of Karen's sexual assault by a neighbour. The camera follows Henry across the road before holding on him as he beats up said neighbour, and without any cut or movement. The audience are forced to sit and watch this terrible violence as Henry continues to abuse the unbreakable power he possesses. Within that scene, the diegetic sounds of a typical neighbourhood add to the realness of the shot created by the continuity of the shot, and help to show just how out of place Henry is in the normal domesticated world. Quickly exploring the mise-en-scène of this scene, we consider the gun that Henry uses to scare off Karen's pervy neighbour. It bears a huge amount of importance on Karen's narrative as a prop. There are a multitude of gang-related props which help realise the film, but this gun holds a significant amount of importance. It's the object that initiates Karen's link to the mob. She hides this prop willingly and tells the audience that it excites her. Karen is the most normal character in the film, and she is supposed to be the most relatable, because she is an outsider with an objective view on the mob life. However, she accepts it, and therefore we accept it too. The theory of Chekhov's gun will tell us if we see a gun and the importance is placed on this gun, it will eventually be fired. Turning to the edit aspect, Goodfellas is evidence for Scorsese's repeated use of editing techniques, such as the freeze frame to play to the temporality of the film, gripping the audience from the diegesis to communicate or emphasize something in Goodfellas. Many of the freeze frames happen within the beginning of the film to help highlight the aspects related to the mob life that build Henry's drive and motivations as a character. The freeze frames show the moments when Henry learns the links between violence and power in his life, when the mob threaten his postman, or even when his father beats him. Although, let's focus on this freeze frame. Rather than run away from the criminal act he's just committed, he celebrates it and is portrayed as a hero. The fact that the immense amount of light created by the explosion is nothing more than a silhouette could also be shown as how he's consumed by the destructive lifestyle and that the violence has stripped him of his identity. The majority of the freeze frames in Goodfellas glorify the mob life, but towards the end, when we see the last two freeze frames where Henry and Bobby D are in the diner and have turned enemies, the last freeze frame on Henry is the only one that shows him on his own, symbolizing the dawn and realization that he is no longer living the fantasy mob life he once had. Freeze frames are a common stylistic feature of Scorsese's cinema, which is one of the many reasons why he is argued as one of the modern cinema's auteurs. For example, a freeze frame in Raging Bull during Jack LaMotte's first fight against Sugar Ray Robinson is used to show the protagonist's masculinity, showing his dominance over his opponent through his strength, the only way he knows how when trapped in this masculine prison, represented by the boxing ring. The backlit nature of the shot and the flash of the camera again glorifies his violence, with the low angle of the camera making this violent masculinity seem like something the audience should aspire and admire. And with this comes the costume design in Goodfellas, showing the violent mob life leads to smart, desirable dress. Showing they are rather well off with their dodgy income, it shows they are quite confident gangsters, and they only do things on the sly, so in the daytime they have to act natural. In The Wolf of Wall Street, the main character and sub-characters also wear suits and are very cocky with their amount of money.
You have my money taped to your boobs. Okay, technically you do work for me.
As if they were just successful businesses, earning their money on their normal jobs. But it's just an illusion. This makes the audience feel slightly intimidated, as they can see the things about the characters, like the fact that they can so easily lie to everyone's faces with their fake metaphorical masks. Later in the movie, after Henry's mob life is degrading into sneaky underhand drug smuggling, he is dealing with multiple tasks while suffering of controllable paranoia about the police. As we see, the out of control camera work is parallel to Henry's mental state as he moves around manically whilst on drugs and losing his control through paranoia. The zooms within the sequence are mad and all over the place, as it zooms in and out with Henry. For example, when he takes drugs and it zooms into an extreme close-up of his face as he is completely taken away through the drugs, showing his mental state through the camera work. Again, there is a carrying element of the camera focus as above, where the focus shifts between people and props. For example, of the huge drug packages, which are a major theme in the scene, the focus shifts between the characters and their activities, which Henry talks about in his narration through the voiceover, as he takes us through the story and his perspective. And the factor of paranoia comes through well with this, having the zooms in and out of actions of the characters being random and out of place, and in fact distorting for the viewer, matches up with the editing that is fast paced with multiple different shots being extreme close-ups, then long shots outside again. We are brought into Henry's stress as we try and understand his narrative. Looking at the meaning of cinematography, as we have the crazed motion of the camera work and the fast editing between the close-ups and long shots within this scene, then comparing it to the scenes before at the beginning of the film, it is the complete opposite, with only having one shot taking place at a medium distance in one nice smooth cut. These technical aspects puts us in the shoes of the characters as we marvel with the pleasures of being a gangster. It's then later as we experience Henry's paranoia that we see the reality of the crime life and how the fantasy and glamour dies. Supporting this is the costume design in the mise-en-scène, as most characters look withered away from drug use, are shiny, sweaty and rough through the messy hair and loose clothes. With this, the characters are getting greyer hair and older looking faces, building to this idea that the fantasy is dead and Henry wants it back so much, risking whatever he has left. The final narrative tool used in Goodfellas is a narration that turns into a fourth wall break. Henry Hill gets up from the stand and walks down the courtroom. In The Wolf of Wall Street, we have the narration that turns into a fourth wall break as well. Although the two scenes are different times in the characters' lives, they serve the same narrative purpose, especially in the way they are directed. At the beginning, this surprises us, as they are both in busy situations surrounded by people, then they guide the camera, talking straight to the audience about the details of their lives as criminals, as if they were selling the life straight to the audience. Furthermore, the two scenes may end on different tones, but they are both as is equally as condescending to the audience. In Goodfellas, Henry turns his back to the courthouse and the mob life and faces the audience, turning his back on the thug life and descending into the realm of an average person. Through the narrative forms of this penultimate scene, the audience is indirectly told that their life sucks and that to Henry Hill, being a criminal was better. In The Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan tries to explain an IPO, but he gives up, telling us plainly that he makes a lot of money and it's incredibly illegal. In both films, Scorsese uses narration to make the criminal life appealing to the audience and then criticise us about wanting to be part of it, shutting us down, reminding us that we are average Joes and these criminals are above us. Goodfellas ends with Henry Hill being an average person, and that is his life punishment.
Get to live the rest of my life like a schnook.